Good morning, all you trucker bunnies and trucker fans. This morning I'm sitting here in good old California. Nothing good about it. I wanted to talk a little bit more about why English proficiency is being pushed so much and why it's important. About a month ago, I saw a news video on mother truckers. You can check out their his YouTube channel. He's pretty good. I am a fan of him. He does put out a lot of good, non-biased information, and I really enjoy watching his videos. I like his stuff. About a month ago, he put out a video just to give a little insight on it. He talked about a Chinese driver who was pulled over in Arkansas for not being able to speak English, and then throughout the officer's investigation, they found out that he was pulling a hazmat load without the proper endorsements. So a lot of people have been up in arms about that, talking about how the driver was in the wrong and how he needs to be taken off the road and he's a danger of all motorists around him. And I kind of wanted to touch on that video. I wanted to talk about that video. So I did take pieces out of that Mother Truckers podcast that I plan to use. Hopefully he won't have a problem with it. And the parts that I edited, because I only wanted to present to you the body cam footage of the officer doing the stop, and I wanted to break it down more and give a different angle on it. Now, I'm sure you can see I got my computer open right here. For me, this is a bit of a delicate conversation, and I want to take the attention more off of the driver and onto the system and the consequences or potential consequences of this incident and what it can entail and the effects that it could have. So I'm going to be using the body cam footage throughout this to kind of bring it in. As you can see from the beginning of the video, the initial stop was created. The officer, in my opinion, was pretty professional. I'm not going to argue so much as the driver's ability to speak English. A lot of people point out that when the driver asked the officer, "Could you speak slower so I could understand you better?" First off, that's not necessarily a grounds for an English proficiency violation. Because there could be various reasons why any driver could ask the officer to speak slower. For example, this officer, the stop was obviously done in Arkansas. And for those of you who are not from Arkansas or are used to or not accustomed to meeting people from Arkansas, they have a very strong Southern accent. And I'm sure you could tell from my voice, I do have a bit of a Southern accent. when it comes to my speaking and whatnot. But even I sometimes have trouble kind of processing deeper Southern accents. Like, I mean, if you go straight up boomhauer on my ass, I'm not gonna know what the hell you're saying. I don't even think people in that cartoon knows what the hell he's saying. But we're gonna get into a bit more. So, when the officer asked that driver to see his bills, now the bill of lading is a very important document for us drivers. It tells us what is on the trailer, what is supposed to be on the trailer, and how much weight is in that trailer. These are important for us to know because of safety. Like, for example, my truck will act a lot differently with a heavy load opposed to a light load. Not only performance wise, but braking wise. For example, if I'm coming off an exit, I have a light load. I'm not going to worry too much about how I use my brakes. Now I'm going to be more on the pedal, less on the Jake brake, because it's not going to put up as much wear. Now, if I have a heavy load, if I'm hauling 40,000 pounds or more, it's going to take me a lot longer to stop the truck, because I have to take into consideration how much abuse is going to go onto those brake shoes when I start coming into that exit. So I'm going to rely more on the Jake brake to slow the truck down, which means I'm going to need more stopping distance to allow the Jake brake to do its job. So weight is important. It's also important to know what's in your trailer for any kind of situation. Now, as professional drivers, we don't really talk about what we're hauling. If you go to a truck stop, ask any truck driver what's in their truck, they're gonna look at you suspicious, because that's kind of like a confidentiality thing. But with state troopers or law enforcement, it's a completely different topic. We have to be able to explain to them what is in there. So, to go on into the video, the officer decides to do a level 1 inspection, and he also decides to examine the freight that's in the trailer. Now, being that the driver said it was just general commodities coming out of California, going into Pennsylvania, then he says New Jersey, like he wasn't sure. For me, I didn't see a big issue with that. The way he said it, like, he didn't even look at his bills when he gave that answer. I've hauled so much freight. It's like, you ask me right off the dime, it's like, I've been to so many places, so many loads, and if I was nervous, okay, I could kind of understand, like, I could kind of understand that a little bit. But right off the bat, the bill of lading, when he said general commodities, and then when the officer has him crack the seal on the trailer, which for those of you who don't know, the sealing of the trailer is definitely for liability and safety. It shows that, because the way it's supposed to work is the shipper is supposed to close the doors on the trailer and seal it, and that creates a custody chain. And then when we arrive at the receiver is supposed to look at the seal on the trailer before it is broken to verify that it is the same exact seal that the shippers put on the door. That proves that the doors have not been opened throughout transport. So when officers, when they open doors, they have to give documentation. They have to reseal the trailer, and they have to give the driver documentation showing that they are the ones that open the doors. Again, it's not out of the ordinary. I mean, it's not too common, but it's not out of the ordinary, and it's not out of the framework of what they do. And again, when it comes to cargo and freight being hauled, there is a level of a Fourth Amendment exemption, so they don't have to have a court order. They don't have to have a search warrant to open the doors. They just have to have proper documentation, and most cases, probable cause. But when the officer opened up that back door, the first thing he saw was hazmat placards on the freight. Now, right there, that is an immediate red flag. When the driver states that he's hauling general freight, and then you see a bunch of hazmat placards on the pallets, that's an automatic red flag. So, in that sense, I kind of look at the shippers and the freight brokers and the dispatch. I gotta call them on that, because to me, in a sense, they took advantage of this driver. When you're hauling hazmat or any form of hazmat freight, you have to be endorsed. You have to have specialized training to haul stuff like that. And when you get that specialized, and it's not just the specialized training, but you also have to have certifications. You have to have the TSA gets involved with your hazmat certification. They have to endorse you. Like, you could get your hazmat endorsement through DOT, just like any other endorsement, but it's meaningless unless the TSA approves your hazmat endorsement. And once you get that hazmat endorsement through the TSA, it has to be verified. The shipper should have verified his hazmat endorsement before they loaded his truck. So on that, I'm calling foul on the shipper. The fact that they did not verify his endorsement puts them in the wrong. The broker, whenever brokers broke loads, they know who they're brokering to. Now, I checked. I pulled up this carrier. I pulled up the carrier on a safer website. I'll also put those findings in this video. But you could clearly see the carrier that was hauling that freight was not listed for any sort of hazmats. They were only their authorization was for general freight only. Alright, so as you can see here, we're looking at the safer website, and like I said, this carrier was formed. It's almost 2 years old, out of California, go figure. But you can see only general freight and fresh produce and refrigerated goods was listed. They actually have a decent DOT inspection score. It's not too bad. Right there you can see the Arkansas violation for the hazmat load that they weren't supposed to be hauling. Let's see. But 22% out of service on the vehicle isn't that bad. They've only had one crash with one injury. So in itself, it doesn't appear to be a bad carrier. They only have 6 power units and 6 drivers. So brokers, whenever they broke loads, they look at safer. They look at the carrier's safer ratings. They look at the company. They look at that information. And being that they did not see the hazmat on that carrier, and yet they still gave that load, a hazmat load, to that carrier, puts them in the wrong. The fact that the bill of lading, which is produced by the shipper, stated general commodities, general freight, it did not have any reportable quantities for the hazmat on that load, for those chemicals. So the shipper right there falsified documents, falsified that bill of lading before giving it to the driver. So right there, the shipper is in the wrong again. And these aren't just wrongs, these aren't just violations, these are actual crimes committed by the brokers and by the carriers, or by the shippers. So now let's pivot back to that driver for a moment. Now obviously English was a barrier for him. That was pretty obvious from the entire video. So being that he couldn't speak English very well, chances are he couldn't read English very well either, which means he could not read those bill of lading documents properly. So that created an opening for abuse, and the shippers exploited that. They exploited it. No, I mean, that's the way I'm calling it. They exploited the fact that he couldn't properly read the bill of lading. They exploited his naivety. I can't even say the goddamn word. Shit, I'm gonna go down for English proficiency at this rate. But they exploited his naiveness. And it becomes a trap. The driver fell into that trap. So that was pretty dirty on the shippers. That was pretty dirty on the brokers. And the question is, why would the shippers do that? Why would they take advantage and get that driver to haul an illegal load? Basically, simple answer: money. Anybody with a hazmat endorsement knows the risk, and when there's a higher risk on hauling a load, there's a higher demand, and when there's a higher demand, more money. Hauling hazmat, it costs more money to haul a hazmat load. Nemo, behave. Because of that risk, because of the dangers involved in hauling a load like that. So this was about money, in my opinion. They wanted to run this load cheap, and that's exactly what they tried to do. So they had this non-English speaking driver haul a hazmat load disguised as general freight, so they could pay him general freight rates, because it would have been a lot cheaper than having a hazmat certified driver haul that freight. So this isn't about the driver not being able to speak English. This is about companies taking advantage of drivers who cannot speak English. And that is what I see in this video. This whole entire video is about that. So being that this driver didn't know, wasn't certified for hazmat, he wouldn't know what would have happened in the worst case scenario. So let's talk about an incident that could happen. It's not common, but it's not out of the ordinary. Let's say he's hauling that load. He's coming down the mountain and he's riding his brakes. A lot of drivers do tend to do that. They don't brake properly when driving down steep mountains. It is common, and that is one of the leading causes of trailer fires, believe it or not. You ride the brakes too hard, the brakes get really hot, and then the heat just creates fire, creates the ingredients for the trailer to start to catch on fire. So we're gonna use that scenario. So the trailer catches on fire, or it could be some other reason, but we're gonna use that just for this example purpose. So whenever there's a trailer fire, the first thing a professional driver has to do upon noticing is obviously stop the truck. Usually we'll stop the truck depending on Nemo. Stop. And then I swear he is the worst co-star in any video. So we'll stop the truck. Could be on the highway, could be on an exit ramp, could be typically somewhere safe, somewhere easily, and we're gonna disconnect from the trailer. That's like the immediate reaction or action that we take, is to separate the power unit from the trailer. Mainly we do, the number one reason we do that, not only to protect the power unit, not only to protect the main investing equipment or a tractor, but also for common sense. Typically tractor trailers, we carry anywhere between 75 to 300 gallons of diesel fuel. That is, and for those of you who haven't figured it out, diesel fuel is flammable. Obviously it is explosive. So by separating the truck from the tractor, we move all of that explosive diesel fuel further away from the fire as possible. The next thing we do obviously is going to be calling 911, calling the fire department and saying, hey, I got a trailer on fire, I'm on the side of the highway, I need a fire department to come out. Now, emergency response, they're trained for this. So the first thing they're going to ask me is, what is in the trailer? Because that is going to change, that is going to predict the entire narrative for emergency response. So I tell them I'm hauling general freight, non-combustibles. They're going to relay that information to trained firefighters, and they're going to come out and they're going to treat the fire as a non-combustible, which means they're going to fight the fire according to what's in the trailer. Now, if I tell the emergency response. If I tell 911, oh, I'm hauling nitrous oxide, which this driver clearly was, they're going to take an entire different approach to how they contain and fight this fire. And depending on the reportable quantities, law enforcement, they're going to shut down the highway. If it's a good amount of nitrous oxide, I mean, we've all watched the movies. We've all watched those shitty ass Fast and Furious movies. We know what happens when nitrous oxide catches on fire. And think about it. That little piece of shit Honda only had one small canister of nitrous oxide, not an entire truck full. So first off, law enforcement, they're going to shut down the highway because you don't want other cars anywhere near that trailer if it explodes, if it blows. And when the firefighters show up, they're going to use different chemical agents to put out that fire. You can't just throw water on that. You got to use suppressing agents, and you got to fight that fire completely different. So had that information not been given to emergency services, that emergency situation would get 1,000 times worse before anybody even realized it. So that is why it is important to be certified for a hazmat loads. We have to know this stuff. I am not certified for hazmat loads. I will put that out there right now, right here and now. I have not been trained, so I cannot give you the in-depth analysis or the in-depth look of what is supposed to be done, because I just don't have those answers. But it is common. But that is the common sense look that I'm using on explaining it. So again, I'm circling back. I'm blaming the freight brokers and the shippers for this. They should not have loaded his truck. And that is a major issue in the trucking industry, is that they're not going to be held responsible for this. They're simply not. And they took advantage of this driver. They took advantage of him. And that is what happens a lot in this trucking industry now. Take advantage and undercut the drivers just to save $1. So again, going back, these are the reasons why English proficiency is. This is one example of why English proficiency is important in the trucking industry. I'm not even going to question the load in itself, because I don't even know if that load was even legal. Puff gas, it was nitrous oxide, or advertised as puff gas. For those of you who lived in the 90s like myself, we all know what that stuff is. We all know the joys. No, we all know how doing whippage is not enjoyable, because it never was. Yeah. But so I'm not even gonna touch on whether or not that truck or that load in itself or the product. I'm not even gonna touch on that, because simply It's a legal question. Nemo, you are the worst goddamn co-star I have ever worked with. Come on, lay down. Lay down. Lay down. Lay down. You're doing too much. You don't have to steal the show. You don't have to steal the show, all right? So, again, I'm gonna leave the link to the Mother Truckers YouTube channel, so you can check out his channel. And